Welcome to the Business for Aligned Women podcast. I'm Honey. I'm a coach working primarily with women and specializing in aligned business, personal transformation, and embodiment. Each week here I'll be sharing business strategy, business advice, tips and tools for you to think more deeply, for you to get more self-aligned, and for you to start your week in the most conscious and intentional way possible. I know that this episode is really going to help a lot of people. I know that if you're in a state of self-sabotage or procrastination, overthinking, overanalyzing, this is going to be really helpful. And this is the first of my live coaching episodes. So I have an option to leave me a voicemail on my website, on the podcast page, and I listen to those voicemails, and every now and then I'm going to pop them in a podcast episode, and I'm actually going to live coach that person while I am listening to what's going on for them and responding as best I can. I've also taken a few minutes to think about what I want to say about this, because this particular question is so big and I have so much to say. I could talk about it for 5 hours, but I'm not going to do that to you. Before we get into it, one of the final calls to join the Subtle Alchemy program. At this point, while I'm recording this, I just have a couple of spaces left, and this is to start in March. If you're wanting that juicy, intentional, aligned, embodied, grounded, congruent way of building a business, or a new approach to a business that you've already built, jump in that program. It's gentle, it's soft. We're going to only do the things that are really going to give us a return on investment. And we're really going to be gentle with our bodies and our minds, and also make sure that we're nourishing ourselves while we're working on these external things. So let's have a listen to this week's voicemail.
Hi, honey. The question I have for you is, there's business that I want to start, and I've done some trial runs and people have responded really well. I have work at the moment and a pretty good savings account, so I feel like I've got a really good situation to start, but for some reason I just can't do it. I have a real block around it beginning and a lot of fear coming up about it's never going to work, or I'm not going to pull it off, etc. So I would really love and appreciate some words of wisdom around this. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. I think the first thing that I want to say is, please don't think that you're alone in this, and please don't think that this is a personal problem or issue that you have. This is really systemic, and I can honestly rattle off about 50 women right now who follow me and look at all my stories, and they're in the exact same position as you. Little call out there for anyone who's feeling this episode already. It has many reasons why this is so prevalent, and it kind of comes at you from a lot of different directions. So I've put together some points that I want to cover in response that I think are the most beneficial and the most important, but honestly, I could talk about this for 15 hours straight. The biggest thing that I want to start with, and that I want to really land with every single one of you girlies who's in this exact same position, is you need to stop attaching and assigning emotions to anything business related. I know all of you get in your head and make it such a big deal to post on social media. I know that you think that you need to be Picasso with every single email that you write, and you're attaching self-worth, you're attaching feelings of failure, feelings of being seen, feelings of acceptance, sadness, even happiness, validation is probably the biggest one that you're attaching to your business. In order to sustainably run a business, you have to take your emotions out of it. Of course, you will have periods where you feel very upset for a client, or you're very worried about them, or you're very happy for them, or you're very excited for them, or you're pumped for what's going on. But making a mountain out of a molehill because you've dumped all of these emotions on top of this task, really not going to help you. And one way to get through this and think about it is your business is a job, and you wouldn't be kind of babying yourself and making a way bigger deal out of just showing up at your part-time or your full-time job. So why are you respecting your employee more than you're respecting yourself? Okay. In the same vein of things, you need to stop making business personal. Whether your business succeeds, feedback that you receive, good or bad, is not a reflection of who you are, and it's not a reflection of your identity. And when you are in a state where you're taking business personally, it is unsustainable and you will burn out. There's no other ending to that recipe. If these 2 points about emotions and taking it personally are really coming through and you really feel that, I want you to look at ways that you self-validate. Where do you self-validate? Do you self-validate anywhere in your life? What things do you do that give you feelings of validation, and start to validate internally rather than externally? One of my beautiful Peloton instructors, Alex Toussaint, talks about this a lot, and he has a book and he has social media, so he could be worth a follow. But you need to validate internally in order to develop the confidence that is required to show up in the way that you want to show up. And so many people are just grasping at external validation, and it's a recipe for disappointment and it's a recipe for failure. On that same level, if you really relate to the things I've said so far, and don't worry, I have so much more to say, you probably need to focus a little bit on physically grounding and actually calming down your body and having more relaxation time and more rest in your day. I mean, this isn't for everyone. Maybe there's some people out here who are really, really rested, but their mental dialogue is very out of control. But for the majority of people, I think reducing stress and looking at your anxiety will help dissipate some of that overthinking and that assigning too much to things that don't need to be as important as you're making them out to be in your mind. So whatever help that is, whether it's seeing someone or medication or vitamins or exercise or whatever it is, I would look at that. And I have anxiety. I had it a lot worse when I was younger, and things that help me is zero caffeine, not scrolling as much, more time where I don't have input. So a big thing is like just no sound, silence, just listening to the bird song, and making sure I have big slabs of time in my day where I'm not actively inputting data into my system. Another point is that you have to learn to get a bit more comfortable with the unknown. A big thing that's probably holding you back is that you don't know the outcome. But the reality is you don't know the outcome of anything. Everything could change tomorrow. COVID taught us that. You have no control or influence over the outcome of a situation. There's certain things that you can control, which is like, do you show up for your business? Do you do marketing? Do you post online? And there's other things that you can't control, which is like the global financial markets, which may trickle down and have an influence on whether people can purchase what you're selling. And you only need to worry about the things that you have control over. That is what should be in your field of concern and action, and everything else you have to let it go. You have to show up to the extent that you can without an attachment to the outcome. And sweetheart, that is business in a sentence. I'll get onto that a little bit more later on. Some of the big ones in this conversation, which I talk about a lot with my audience, I don't think my audience fully understands internalized patriarchy. If you're listening to this and you hear me say internalized patriarchy, but you actually don't know what I mean, send me a DM, because I would love to get that little survey. Because a big part of what's going on with you and why I say it's systemic is that you've internalized patriarchy, and to an extent you might have internalized misogyny. And what I mean by that is most of our external culture says men are the ones who should be putting themselves out there and women should be quiet and look after other people and not be seen and heard and not take up space and not have very many expectations. And women are the givers of the world, not the takers. When we have that really internalized in our own value system, our own psyche, our body, we really easily self-sabotage in alignment with those ideas. And it's sometimes subconscious, so we don't even know why we're doing that. But I can call out internalized patriarchy immediately when I see it, because I have seen it so much. And the reason why I can call it out is that this problem that you're having, as I said, I can think of 50 names who are also having this problem at this point in time. Honestly, I could probably think of 100. This isn't a you problem. This is a culture problem. This is a system problem. And unless each person makes shifts and changes to no longer action in alignment with that oppressive system, the system will never change. So you need to look at, what do I think the role of a woman is in the world and in business? And is actioning my business in alignment with that view? And if your view is actually no, businessmen are men, then that's what you need to work on as well. On that same vein, I just want to be really clear with you. There is someone out there right now who's less qualified, not as good as it, doesn't have as good of an idea, is not as charismatic, is not as interesting, who doesn't have an interesting life story, who hasn't actually lived the experience, who's not embodying it, who's not aligned with it, and they're making way more money and they're succeeding and they're showing up just because they're showing up. And the way that they're showing up, or how they got there, is that they got out of their head and they did it anyway. Another key component which is important in this conversation is the time will pass anyway. Whether or not you do it, the time will pass. So do you want to be 50 and wondering why you never tried this thing? Or do you want to just try it and see what happens? Personally, I just want to give some background. I never believed that running my own business would mean I would be making more money and be much more financially healthy than having a salaried job. That is a belief that was ingrained from my mother. And she was very vocation oriented. And this is a belief that I have literally still was working on in May 2023. May this year, I was having to reprocess this and really accept it. And I think a big part of what's helped me is that I'm committed to my business no matter what. It's not that there's no other option, because with my studies and my experience, I actually have a ton of options that if I decided to not do my business, I could go and get a highly paid job in many different areas. But it's that I haven't done everything that I could do to make this work. So I'm committed to it 100% until it's working. A little bit of information. Running a business is fucking hard. Even when it's not like running my business is fucking hard. It's not hustle. I'm not overworking. I'm not grinding myself. But the emotional stuff that I have to deal with my clients is really, really hard. And when I lay down my boundaries, I'm really scared and I'm really triggered, and it can affect me for 2 days. It's hard, whether that is the labor is hard, or making the product is hard, or the emotional stuff around it is hard, or selling the product is hard. Something will be fucking hard about running a business. That is just what it is. My business is also very easeful and it's very gentle and it doesn't burn me out, but it's fucking hard. It's a thing to get through. It's a doozy. And every week I'm presented with a new doozy. And you have to be mentally tough to make business work. Intuiting, I think you probably do need to work on your mental toughness, maybe exposure to rejection. And one thing that's helped hundreds of women in my community is doing my TikTok training, and showing up on TikTok according to that training was like exposure therapy for failure, because you just get into the habit of doing it and doing a lot anyway, despite the outcome. And it actually made them feel a lot more confident in many other areas of their business. That's an aside. Another thing that the Peloton instructor I was talking about before, Alex Toussaint, says is you have to show up every day intentionally and with purpose, with no idea about the outcome. And that is actually a lovely way to approach life. You're not expectant. You don't think you deserve anything. You're not believing that the world owes you something, but you're showing up anyway to the best of your abilities. I know you would have heard this before, but your voice is different. How you're going to approach this, how you're going to say this, how you're going to show up is different to anyone else. And that makes it special and that makes it worth doing. And a few other points on just what I know to be true about the women who are in my community. And another little reminder is that your life is meant to be enjoyable. Your life is meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be interesting, and it's not meant to be boring or frustrating. And I know that everyone doesn't hate their job, but when I was working for other people, there were aspects that were enjoyable, but as a majority on a day-to-day basis, it was not enjoyable. It was frustrating. It was upsetting. It was draining. And I was having to live out of alignment because I was working with people who had really, really different values from me. And that did not feel good. If you're in a state like that where you don't feel amazing a lot of the time and you don't feel happy and like you're enjoying yourself, that's another reason to maybe do something differently. Because I know this to be true of all of the women in my community, I want everyone to listen to this. All of you are a lot more capable than you realize. All of you are a lot more capable than you imagine. And all of you have many, many more possibilities than you realize. The possibilities of you making money and having success are wild. Like any woman, come to me, I think I could give you at least 20 ways that you could be successful making money. If you're in this limited mindset where you think you have to have this job or you have to have a salary or you have to do this certain thing in order to be successful, that's also something to work on, because there is so many options out there. It's crazy. I won't go into this in depth, but I know I probably need to start talking about it more. But if you don't know, the reason I started my own business and the various iterations of it, the one thread that's run through the iterations of my business is it's empowering women and it's supporting women to show up better in their life. And the intention of that is that it's developing their self-worth and it's developing their confidence. And why that is my main aim is because I disagree with patriarchy and I think it's absolute crap, and I want to try to go up against it as much as I possibly can. But because I was in a domestic violence, really abusive, physically and even more psychologically abusive relationship for 4 years with an absolute piece of shit human, not even an interesting or good person. And I got to that place and I stayed in that because of how much he grated down my sense of self-worth and my sense of self-confidence. I was so low I just thought that, I was so crap that no one would ever be with me and no one would ever look at me apart from this really crap person who I knew was crap. But I thought I'm almost worse than him, so he's the absolute best that I could possibly get. And I was attractive and I'm fucking smart and I had a really, really great career and I was working my dream job and I was going to yoga every day and I had a nice house and a nice housemate and beautiful animals and things in my family were fine. But that caused me to have such low self-worth that when I got out of it, there was this innate sense in me that I was like, I have to commit my life to trying to stop other women from being in that position. And I know I'm going about it a roundabout way, but I do think anyone who's actually worked with me or been in a call with me, their self-worth and their self-belief, I think it probably did raise from working with me. So if you're running from low self-worth, I'm asking you personally to please stop that, because it's not a reflection of reality. And I know that we can all get in these cycles or these environments or situations or, God forbid, relationships that make us feel that way, but it's not true. Your value and your worth is infinite. All that needs to happen is that you have to start showing up for it. I want to finish with a quote from the book called The Mountain Is You, which I think you should probably read, Florence. And I do suggest that everyone listening to this should probably read or listen to as an audiobook. And it's talking about self-sabotage. So this is a quote that I'm going to finish on. Your new life is going to cost you your old one. It's going to cost you your comfort zone and your sense of direction. It's going to cost you relationships and friends. It's going to cost you being liked and understood. It doesn't matter. The people who are meant for you are going to meet you on the other side. You're going to build a new comfort zone around the things that actually move you forward. Instead of being liked, you're going to be loved. Instead of being understood, you're going to be seen. All you're going to lose is what was built for a person you no longer are. If any of this hits, share it with someone that you love and care about and know needs to hear this. Please leave a review if any of this hits. And I will be in your ears next week for the last time in 2023.